Sometimes coming home means choosing between the dreams you've chased and the love you left behind. But what if you could have both? Maya stepped out of her old Honda and looked up at the familiar two-story building. 5 years had passed since she last stood on this street, yet everything looked exactly the same. The morning sun cast long shadows across Main Street, and she could smell fresh coffee from the cafe down the block. The keys felt heavy in her hand as she walked toward the bookshop. Her grandmother's shop. Now her shop. The thought still didn't feel real. Just 3 weeks ago, she was living in a cramped New York apartment, painting canvas after canvas that no one seemed to want to buy. Now she was back in Cedar Falls, population 8,000, where everyone knew everyone else's business. Maya pushed open the front door and heard the familiar bell chime. Dust particles danced in the sunbeams streaming through the windows. Books lined every wall, reaching up to the ceiling. Her grandmother had always said that books were like old friends. They never judged you and were always there when you needed them. She climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment above. The small space felt like a time capsule. Her grandmother's favorite reading chair sat by the window, a half-finished crossword puzzle still on the side table. Maya touched the soft fabric of the chair and felt tears prick her eyes. She had loved this woman who raised her after her parents died. Yet she had stayed away for 5 years, too proud to admit her life in the city wasn't working out. The silence was broken by the sound of classical music coming from next door. Maya frowned. The old hardware store had been empty when she left for college. She walked to the window and peered through the thin curtains. Through the window of the neighboring building, she could see photography equipment and soft lighting. Over the next 2 days, Maya threw herself into cleaning and organizing. She found boxes of her grandmother's papers in the bedroom closet. Most were business records and old receipts, but tucked in the bottom was a small bundle of letters tied with a blue ribbon. The return address made her heart skip. They were, from David Chen, her old classmate who lived next door. Maya sat on the bed and untied the ribbon with shaking fingers. The letters were recent, written over the past 2 years. She read about his photography business, his travels to nearby towns for weddings and portraits, and his quiet life in Cedar Falls. But what struck her most was how her grandmother had written back. The letters revealed a friendship that had grown deep over time. "Your Maya was always special," one letter read. "I hope she finds her way back here someday. I think you two were meant to cross paths again." Maya's cheeks burned. Her grandmother had been matchmaking from beyond the grave. That afternoon, she decided to tackle the back porch that connected both buildings. The wooden steps creaked under her feet as she swept away leaves and dirt. She was bent over, scrubbing the old boards, when she heard a door open behind her. "Maya?" She froze. She knew that voice, even though it was deeper now, more mature. Slowly, she turned around. David stood in his doorway, camera hanging around his neck, looking as shocked as she felt. He was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader. His dark hair was shorter now, and he wore a simple white t-shirt and jeans. But his eyes were the same, kind and intelligent, with laugh lines at the corners that hadn't been there in high school. "Hi," she said, suddenly aware that she was wearing old clothes and probably had dust in her hair. "I heard someone moving around over there," he said, stepping onto the shared porch. "I wondered if it might be you." They stood there for a moment, the weight of 5 years hanging between them. In high school, they had been inseparable. They studied together, shared their dreams, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Then came that terrible fight during senior year. Words that couldn't be taken back and her parents' firm disapproval of their friendship. When she left for college, they hadn't spoken. "I'm sorry about your grandmother," David said softly. "She was an amazing woman. Thank you. I know you two became friends. I found some of your letters." His cheeks reddened slightly. "She was lonely after you left. I started helping her with small repairs around the shop, and we just started talking. She told me stories about you growing up, about your art." Maya felt a pang of guilt. While she was chasing her dreams in New York, this man had been taking care of the woman who raised her. "How long have you had the photography studio?" she asked. "About 3 years now. Business is good. Lots of weddings, family portraits, some, Commercial work for businesses in town. He paused. What about you? How's the big city treating you? Maya hesitated. How could she explain that her marriage had fallen apart, that her art career was going nowhere, that she felt more lost at 27 than she had at 18? It's been an adventure, she said carefully. But I'm back now. Going to reopen the bookshop. David's face lit up. That's wonderful. The town really missed having it open. Your grandmother always said it was the heart of the community. A comfortable silence fell between them. Maya found herself studying his face, noting how he had grown into his features. In high school, he had been cute in a boyish way. Now he was handsome in a way that made her stomach flutter. I should let you get back to your cleaning, he said, but he didn't move toward his door. Actually, Maya heard herself saying, I could use some help moving some heavy boxes, if you're not busy. The smile that spread across his face was the same one she remembered from all those years ago. I'd be happy to help. As they worked together that afternoon, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of being home. Not just in the physical space, but in the easy conversation, the shared laughter, the way David anticipated what she needed before she asked. When the sun began to set and David finally headed back to his own place, Maya stood on the porch and watched him go. The familiar ache in her chest told her that some feelings, no matter how much time passed, never really went away. That night, as she lay in her grandmother's old bed, Maya stared at the ceiling and wondered if coming home had been about more than just inheriting a bookshop. Maybe her grandmother's letters to David hadn't been coincidence. Maybe some stories were meant to have second chapters. Maya woke up to the sound of hammering next door. She checked her phone. It was barely 7 in the morning. She pulled on a robe and stepped onto the back porch, squinting in the early sunlight. Sorry, David called out from his window. I'm fixing a loose shutter. Didn't mean to wake you. It's okay, Maya said, though her hair was a mess and she felt embarrassed to be seen in her pajamas. I need to get up early anyway. She had spent the previous evening going through more of her grandmother's things and discovered something amazing. The bookshop wasn't just a bookshop anymore. Over the past few years, her grandmother had slowly transformed it into something special. A place where local artists could sell their work, where people could buy art supplies, and where the community gathered for book readings and craft workshops. Maya made coffee and walked downstairs to really look at the shop with fresh eyes. In the back corner, easels were set up with half-finished paintings. Shelves displayed handmade pottery, jewelry, and small sculptures. Her grandmother had created exactly what the town needed, a creative heart where people could express themselves. But the place needed work. The walls needed fresh paint. Several light fixtures were broken, and some of the older bookshelves sagged under the weight of too many books. Maya stood in the middle of it all, feeling overwhelmed. A knock on the front door made her jump. Through the glass, she could see David holding 2 cups of coffee and a small toolbox. Thought you might need some help getting this place ready, he said when she opened the door. And coffee. Everyone needs coffee. You don't have to do this, Maya said, but she was already reaching for the cup. Don't you have your own work to do? I don't have any shoots until this afternoon. Besides, your grandmother helped me so much when I was starting out. I owe her family the same kindness. They started with the broken lights. David had steady hands and seemed to know exactly what he was doing, while he worked on the electrical issues. Maya began sorting through the art supplies, organizing them by type and checking what needed to be restocked. Your grandmother told me you were studying art in college, David said from the top of a ladder. She was so proud of your paintings. Maya felt her cheeks warm. I'm still painting, though I'm not sure if I'm any good at it. Can I see some of your work? Maya hesitated. Her paintings were personal, emotional. They showed too much of her inner world. But something about David's genuine interest made her want to share. She disappeared upstairs and returned with 3 canvases. The paintings were abstract but expressive, swirls of color that seemed to move and breathe on the canvas. One was mostly blues and grays, like a storm over water. Another burst with reds and oranges like fire or passion. The third was softer, with purples and greens that felt like dawn breaking. David climbed down from the ladder and studied each painting carefully. He didn't speak for a long time, just looked. Maya's heart pounded as she waited for his reaction. "These are incredible," he finally said. "They're like you've painted emotions instead of objects. This one," he pointed to the stormy blue painting, "makes me feel lonely but also hopeful, like being sad but knowing it won't last forever." Maya stared at him. Her ex-husband had always looked at her paintings with polite confusion, never understanding what she was trying to express, but David got it immediately. "I painted that one during my divorce," she said quietly. "It was the hardest time of my life, but also when I learned I could survive anything." "I'd love to show you some of my photography if you're interested," David said. "I think you'd understand what I'm trying to capture." That afternoon, after they had installed new light bulbs and started painting the walls a warm cream color, David led Maya next door to his studio. The space was clean and organized with professional lighting equipment and a computer setup for editing photos. But what took her breath away were the photographs covering the walls. These weren't typical wedding or portrait photos. David had captured something deeper in each face, the joy in an elderly couple's eyes as they renewed their wedding vows, the pride in a father's expression as he watched his daughter graduate, the quiet strength in a farmer's weathered hands. Each image told a complete story. "You see people's souls," Maya said, stopping in front of a photo of a young mother holding her newborn baby. The love and exhaustion and pure wonder in the woman's face was so real, it made Maya's eyes water. "I try to find the truth in every moment," David said. "Anyone can take a pretty picture, but to capture what someone is really feeling, that's the challenge." They spent the next hour looking at his work and talking about art. Maya realized that David understood her creative struggles in a way no one ever had. When she talked about the frustration of trying to express feelings through color and shape, he nodded knowingly. When he described the patience required to wait for the perfect moment to capture someone's authentic emotion, she felt the same recognition. As the days passed, they fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings were for working on the bookshop, painting, organizing, repairing. David proved to be handy with tools and had a good eye for design. He suggested rearranging some of the displays to create better flow through the space, and Maya found herself trusting his judgment completely. Afternoons were for their individual work. Maya would paint while David edited photos or met with clients, but they often took breaks together, sharing lunch on the back porch or walking to the coffee shop down the street. One evening, as they were cleaning paintbrushes together, Maya found herself watching David's hands. They were strong but gentle, careful with everything he touched. When he caught her looking, she quickly turned away, her face burning. "Maya," he said softly. She looked up, and the expression in his eyes made her heart race. For a moment, she thought he might say something about the tension that had been building between them. Instead, he smiled and handed her a clean brush. "Make a good team," he said. "Yes," she whispered, "we do." That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about how natural it felt to work alongside David, how their creative visions seemed to complement each other perfectly. She was falling for him again, maybe harder than she had in high school. But this time, she was a different person, older, more aware of how easily good things could be lost. She just hoped she was brave enough not to run away when things got complicated. The idea came to Maya while she was arranging some of David's photographs alongside local pottery on one of the shop's displays. The way his black and white portraits looked next to the colorful handmade bowls created something magical. Each piece of art made the others look even better. "David," she called out. He was replacing a broken board on the back porch steps. "Come look at this." He wiped his hands on his jeans and joined her inside. When he saw what she had arranged, his face lit up with understanding. "They work together," he said. "The photos and the pottery, they're having a conversation. That's exactly what I was thinking. And you know what? The Autumn Arts Festival is coming up in 3 weeks. What if we did a joint exhibition? Your photographs with my paintings?" David was quiet for a moment, studying the display. Maya's heart sank. Maybe it was a silly idea, Maybe he didn't want to mix his professional work with her amateur paintings. "I think it's brilliant," he said finally. "But are you sure you're ready to show your work publicly?" Maya's stomach fluttered with nerves, but she nodded. "I'll never be ready if I keep waiting. Besides, if people don't like them, at least they'll love your photographs." They spent the next 2 weeks choosing which pieces to display and planning how to arrange them. David selected 20 of his most powerful portraits, images that showed the full spectrum of human emotion. Maya chose 8 of her most personal paintings, including the stormy blue one David had connected with so deeply. As they worked together, Maya learned more about David's life over the past 5 years. He told her about the loneliness of small-town life, how he sometimes felt invisible despite knowing everyone in town. He talked about his photography trips to other cities, always wondering if he should move somewhere bigger but never quite able to leave Cedar Falls behind. "I kept thinking maybe you'd come back someday," he admitted one evening as they hung his photographs on temporary display walls. "Your grandmother always said you would." Maya's hand stilled on the frame she was adjusting. "Did you really think about me all these years?" "Every day," he said simply. The honesty in his voice made her turn around. David was looking at her with an expression she remembered from high school, vulnerable and hopeful at the same time. "David, about what happened before I left for college. You don't have to explain anything," he said quickly. "We were kids. Your parents thought I wasn't good enough for you, and maybe they were right." "They were wrong," Maya said firmly. "So wrong. I was just too young and scared to fight them." They worked in comfortable silence after that, but Maya could feel something shifting between them. The easy friendship they had rebuilt was deepening into something more intense, more complicated. 2 days before the festival, Maya made a discovery that changed everything. She was looking for more frames in David's storage closet when she found a small wooden box tucked behind some equipment. Inside were letters she had written to David during their senior year, before their big fight. Her handwriting looked so young, so hopeful. But underneath the letters was something that made her gasp. It was a small painting she had given him for his 18th birthday. A simple landscape of the creek behind their high school, where they used to sit and talk about their dreams. She had painted it in art class and given it to him shyly, not sure if he would like it. "David?" she called out, her voice shaking. He appeared in the doorway, took one look at what she was holding, and his face went pale. "I can explain," he started. "You kept it," she whispered. "All these years you kept everything." "Maya, why didn't you ever contact me? Why didn't you tell me you still cared?" David ran a hand through his hair, looking tortured. "What was I supposed to say? Hey, remember me? The guy from your hometown you left behind? I saw your wedding photos on social media. You looked happy. I wasn't going to ruin that." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She had been so unhappy in her marriage, feeling misunderstood and alone, while David was here all along, keeping pieces of their young love like treasures. "I was never happy," she said. "I married someone who didn't understand me at all. I spent 5 years feeling like I was disappearing." The festival opening was on a Friday evening. The whole town seemed to show up, which in Cedar Falls meant about 200 people crowded into the community center. Maya stood nervously beside her paintings, watching people's reactions. To her amazement, people loved her work. Mrs. Henderson from the grocery store stood in front of the fire-colored painting for 10 minutes, saying it reminded her of her late husband's passion for life. The high school art teacher bought the purple and green dawn painting on the spot, saying she wanted to hang it in her classroom to inspire her students. But it was David's photographs that really drew crowds. People found themselves in his images, not literally but emotionally. They saw their own joys and struggles reflected in the faces of strangers. As the evening wound down, Maya and David found themselves alone with their art, counting the red dots that indicated sold pieces. They had both done better than expected. "Thank you," Maya said. "This never would have happened without you." "Are you kidding? People came for your paintings. They're talking about them more than anything else here." They walked home together through the quiet streets, both carrying the glow of success and shared achievement. When they reached the back porch they now both considered home, neither wanted the evening to end. Want to sit for a while? David asked, gesturing to the old porch swing his grandfather had installed years ago. They sat side by side, the swing creaking gently as they moved back and forth. The night air was cool and Maya found herself moving closer to David's warmth. I've been thinking about what you said, she told him, about keeping my letters all these years. Maya, you don't have to... No, let me say this. I think about that fight we had before graduation all the time, how stupid and proud we both were, how we let other people's opinions matter more than what we felt for each other. David was quiet, but she could feel him listening with his whole attention. I don't want to make the same mistakes again, she continued. I don't want to let fear keep me from saying what I really feel. The swing had stopped moving. David turned to face her, and in the moonlight, she could see the same love in his eyes that had been there when they were 18. What do you really feel? He asked softly. Maya's heart pounded, but she didn't look away. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to come home to you. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while Maya was arranging new books on the shelf. She almost didn't answer the unknown Chicago number, but something made her pick up. Maya Rodriguez? This is Catherine Williams from the Meridian Gallery in Chicago. We saw your work at a regional arts showcase and we're very interested in offering you a position as our featured artist for the spring season. Maya's hand started shaking. The Meridian Gallery was one of the most respected contemporary art spaces in the Midwest. Getting featured there could launch her career in ways she had only dreamed about. Wow. Can you tell me more about what this would involve? She managed to say. We'd want you to create 12 new pieces over the next 6 months leading up to a solo exhibition in April. We'd provide studio space, materials, and a living stipend, of course. It's exactly the kind of opportunity most artists spend years working toward. After Catherine hung up, Maya stood in the middle of her grandmother's bookshop staring at her phone. 6 months ago, this call would have been the answer to all her prayers. Now it felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke. She walked outside and found David photographing the morning light as it hit the old courthouse across the street. He looked up when he saw her, and his smile faded when he noticed her expression. What's wrong? He asked immediately. Maya told him about the call, watching his face carefully as she explained the opportunity. She saw pride flash in his eyes, followed quickly by something that looked like pain. Maya, that's incredible, he said, and she could hear him trying to make his voice sound excited. The Meridian Gallery, I've heard of them. This is your big break. David. No, listen to me. This is what you've been working toward your whole life. You can't pass this up because of us. The way he said us made her heart ache, like they were something fragile that might break if handled too roughly. That evening, Maya couldn't concentrate on anything. She tried to paint, but her hands wouldn't cooperate. She tried to read, but the words blurred together. Finally, she walked next door and knocked on David's studio entrance. Can we talk? She asked when he opened the door. They sat on his couch, and Maya found herself studying his hands as he poured them both tea. Those steady, gentle hands that had helped rebuild her grandmother's shop that created beautiful art, that she was starting to imagine touching her face. I keep thinking about what you said, Maya began, about not letting this opportunity pass me by. It's the truth, David said firmly. You're too talented to stay hidden in a small town. But what if I don't want to be found anymore? What if I've already found what I was looking for? David set down his tea and looked at her with such tenderness that it took her breath away. Maya, I can't be the reason you give up on your dreams. I won't be that person. And I can't be the person who runs away from love again, she said softly. I've spent my whole life chasing after things I thought I wanted, only to realize they were never going to make me happy. They talked until almost midnight, going in circles around the same impossible choice: career or love, dreams or home, individual success or shared happiness. The next few days passed in a blur of uncertainty. Maya called Catherine Williams twice to ask for more time to decide, and both times the gallery director sounded more impatient. Meanwhile, David threw himself into his work, taking on extra photography jobs and staying busy from dawn until dark. Maya could feel him pulling away, trying to make it easier for her to leave. On Friday evening, a storm rolled in from the west. Maya was upstairs in her apartment, trying unsuccessfully to paint, when the power went out. The whole street went dark, and she could hear wind howling around the building. A knock at her door made her jump. David stood on the other side, holding 2 candles and looking worried. "I wanted to make sure you were okay," he said. "This storm came out of nowhere." "I'm fine," she said, though she wasn't really. She felt like she was falling apart inside, torn between 2 different versions of her future. "I brought dinner," David said, holding up a bag from the deli down the street. "I thought we could eat together, as friends." The way he emphasized, friends, told Maya everything she needed to know about how much he was struggling too. They set up candles around her small dining table and ate sandwiches by flickering light. The storm raged outside, making the apartment feel like a cozy cave cut off from the rest of the world. Without electricity, without phones buzzing or computers demanding attention, there was nothing to focus on but each other. "Tell me about Chicago," David said quietly. "What would your life look like there?" Maya described the gallery, the studio space, the artistic community she would be joining. But as she talked, she realized something important. Every detail she mentioned felt empty without someone to share it with. "It sounds amazing," David said when she finished. "You'd be crazy not to go." "Would I?" Maya asked. "David, can I ask you something honestly?" He nodded. "If I stay, will you be able to look at me in 10 years and not wonder if you held me back? Will you be able to love me without feeling guilty?" David was quiet for a long time. The candles flickered between them, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Can I ask you something honestly too?" he finally said. Maya nodded. "If you go, will you be able to create art without feeling like something's missing? Will you be able to be happy knowing you walked away from this twice?" The question hung in the air between them. Maya realized they had moved closer together during their conversation. She could see the flecks of gold in David's dark eyes. Could smell his familiar scent of soap and camera chemicals. "I think," she said slowly, "that I've been asking myself the wrong question this whole time." "What do you mean?" "I keep asking what I should do. But maybe the question is what I want to do. What would make me happiest, not what looks best on paper." David's eyes never left her face. "And what would make you happiest?" Maya felt her heart pounding as she looked at this man who had been her first love, her best friend, her artistic partner, and now something deeper than all of those things combined. She thought about all the years she had spent running toward dreams that turned out to be mirages, all the time she had wasted being afraid of the one thing that had always felt real. She stood up from her chair and moved toward him. David's eyes widened, but he didn't move away. Maya reached out and touched his face gently, feeling the warmth of his skin under her fingertips. "This would make me happiest," she whispered. "You, us, building something together instead of chasing things apart." "Maya," David breathed. She came closer until she was standing between his knees, looking down into his upturned face. His hands came up to rest lightly on her waist, and she felt like every cell in her body was coming alive. "I'm done running away from the best thing in my life," she said. And then she leaned down and kissed him, soft and sure, and full of all the love she had been too afraid to admit. David's arms came up around her, pulling her closer, and Maya felt like she was finally, truly coming home. Maya woke up to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For the first time in months, she felt completely peaceful. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and clean, and her heart felt just as clear. She found David in the bookshop kitchen making breakfast and humming softly to himself. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her stomach flutter all over again. "Good morning," he said, pulling her into his arms for a gentle kiss. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," she said honestly. They sat together at the small table, sharing toast and coffee while the morning light painted everything golden. Maya felt like she was seeing her life clearly for the first time. "I need to call Catherine Williams today," she said. David's hand found hers across the table. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. The gallery opportunity is amazing, but it's not my path. At least not right now. I want to build something here, with you." "What did you have in mind?" Maya's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Remember how well our art worked together at the festival? What if we expanded the bookshop into a real community arts center? You could have studio space for photography classes. I could teach painting workshops. We could host exhibitions for local artists. Maybe bring in guest teachers from the city." David was quiet for a moment, but Maya could see his mind working. "We'd need funding," he said slowly. "And permits. And a lot more space." "The building next to yours is empty," Maya pointed out. "Mr. Patterson has been trying to sell it for 2 years. Maybe he'd consider a lease with the option to buy." "You've really thought about this?" "I stayed awake thinking about it after you fell asleep," Maya admitted. "David, I know I could probably make it as an artist in Chicago, but I don't want to just make it. I want to make a difference. Here, we could help other people find their creativity. We could build something that lasts." That afternoon, they walked through the empty building next door, imagining how it could be transformed. The space was larger than Maya had remembered, with huge windows that would be perfect for art studios and a big open area that could host community events. "The lighting in here would be incredible for photography," David said, looking up at the tall ceilings. "And look at this wall. It's perfect for hanging large paintings," Maya added. By the time they left, they had sketched out a rough floor plan and were both bubbling with ideas. Maya felt a creative energy she hadn't experienced since high school, when everything seemed possible. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Maya called Catherine Williams and politely declined the gallery position, explaining that she had decided to pursue a different path. To her surprise, Catherine was understanding and even interested in Maya's community arts center idea. "If you get this project off the ground, we'd love to partner with you for traveling exhibitions," Catherine said. "Rural arts programs are really important, and it sounds like you're creating something special." Maya and David spent their days working on business plans, talking to the bank about loans, and meeting with local officials about permits and zoning. In the evenings, they painted and photographed, documenting their vision for the future center. Mr. Patterson proved eager to work with them on the empty building. His own daughter was an artist living in Denver, and he liked the idea of his property being used to support creativity in Cedar Falls. "This town needs more young people like you two," he said, shaking hands on their lease agreement. "People who see possibility instead of just problems." 6 months later, Maya stood in the main gallery of the Cedar Falls Community Arts Center, putting the finishing touches on her first solo exhibition. The paintings surrounding her told the story of her journey home, from the lonely blues of her New York years to the warm, hopeful colors of her new life with David. The centerpiece of the show was a large canvas she had completed just the week before. It showed 2 figures sitting on a porch swing, surrounded by swirling colors that seemed to dance with joy and possibility. She had painted it from memory of that first night when she and David had really talked about their feelings, and looking at it now, she could almost hear the creak of the swing and feel the cool night air. "It's perfect," David said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Are you ready for tonight?" The opening reception was in an hour, and Maya could already see people gathering on the street outside. The whole town seemed excited about the new arts center, and several regional newspapers had sent reporters to cover the story. "I think so," Maya said, leaning back against David's chest. "I can't believe we actually did this." "We make a good team," David said, echoing the words he had spoken months ago when they were just rebuilding a bookshop together. "The best team," Maya agreed. The exhibition opening was everything Maya had hoped for, and more. People crowded into the gallery space, admiring not just her paintings but the beautiful renovation work David had done on the building. His photography studio in the back was busy with visitors too, and several people signed up for the classes they would be offering starting the following month. Maya watched David giving tours of the space, explaining their vision for community workshops and visiting artist programs. His face glowed with pride and excitement, and she felt her heart swell with love for this man who had helped her dreams grow bigger instead of smaller. Later that evening, after the last guests had gone home and they had cleaned up the reception dishes, Maya and David sat on their old porch swing behind the buildings. The Arts Center glowed softly in the darkness, its windows lit up like a beacon. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had taken that Chicago job?" David asked. Maya considered this. "Sometimes," she said honestly, "but not in a way that makes me sad. I think about it the way you might wonder about a path you didn't take in the woods, curious but not regretful." "I'm glad you stayed," David said simply. "I'm glad I came home," Maya replied. She thought about her grandmother, who had always believed that home wasn't just a place, but a feeling of belonging. Looking around at the community they had built together, the art they had created, and the man whose hand was intertwined with hers, Maya knew she had finally found exactly where she belonged. The future stretched out ahead of them, full of possibility and promise. There would be more exhibitions to plan, more students to teach, more dreams to build together. But for now, Maya was content to sit in the gentle swing of the porch, surrounded by everything she had ever really wanted, knowing that the best stories were the ones you wrote with someone else. As if reading her thoughts, David squeezed her hand and smiled. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked. "With you?" Maya said, turning to face him. "I'm ready for anything." Above them, the stars shone down on the little town of Cedar Falls, on the art center that was already changing lives, and on two people who had found their way back to each other and forward into a future they would create together, one beautiful day at a time.